So tonight's message is going to be a slightly different topic than Ezekiel, and it's going to be the seemingly random topic of contentment. 2 things I ask of you, O Lord. Do not refuse me before I die. Keep falsehood and lies far from me, and give me neither poverty nor riches, but give me only my daily bread. Otherwise I may have too much and disown you, and say, who is the Lord? Or I may become poor and steal, and so dishonor the name of my God. Proverbs 30:7-9. So the question I ask from this, are we content with our daily bread? Can we truly go before the Lord with conviction and say that whatever my lot, thou hast taught me to say, it is well with my soul, and really truly be well? Or more often than not, are we caught up in the ever-elusive pursuit for more and more? A better job, a particular school, a dream college, a different or a nicer or a better-looking boss, a bigger house, more money, shinier car, latest gadget, vacation, the holidays to be over, the in-laws to move far, far, far away, the kids to grow up and move out, another gadget, the weekend, prosperity in whatever form, the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. Do we have these voids that are just never satisfied, never content? Are we looking at our friends on Facebook and wondering, why can't I have that too? Although they're probably going in debt to fund whatever it is. It's so easy to get depressed looking at such things. Are we playing the lottery, hoping the winnings will help our current situation? What about consumer debt, the divorce rate, things many people would consider first world problems? Are we forgetting the words of Job, that if they trust and obey him, they will spend the rest of their days in prosperity and their years in contentment? How are we defining prosperity? Is it only financial? Or are we looking at peace and health and happiness and relationships, not only with one another, but with our Lord? Are we forgetting where it says elsewhere in Proverbs that the fear of the Lord leads to life, and then one rests content, untouched by trouble? So what is this ever-elusive contentment that I refer to? A definition is usually a good place to begin. Starting with the scriptures, the cornerstone of contentment is a heart that trusts the Lord. So a definition for contentment: an inner sense of rest or peace that comes from being right with God above all, and knowing that He is in control of what happens to us. It's a steadfast focus on His kingdom and service to Him, and not the love of relationships, wealth, power, or privilege above Him. Contentment lies not in what we have or what we don't have, but in knowing whose child we are and being at peace at that. It's so easy to look horizontally to keep up with the Joneses, but this contentment's not about looking horizontally, but vertically and storing our treasures there. Contentment is to be at peace with His sufficiency to do all things through us and not our own sufficiency. So easy to get caught up in the American dream. Let's move west, build our log cabin with our own sweat, blood, and tears, and say that it's all us. And while we might have done it, was it us or was it His power through us? Contentment is to not be battered or swayed by every circumstance, every difficult person, every wind of strife or doctrine, to be wrongly seduced by prosperity or the things of this world, but a steady assurance and thankfulness of whose hand has provided for us, knowing that He will never leave us and never forsake us. And contentment is not something we're born with. It's not natural. It's a victory that is achieved the same way any other victory is achieved, the same way any other sin is conquered, through the blood of Yeshua, through confessing the sin, believing in His death on the cross, his ability to forgive us and to cleanse us not only from the sin, but the desire to keep sinning, and us allowing him to do open heart surgery on us. And as with anything, it's not an overnight process, but with anything, victory is possible. So we've defined what contentment is. What's some more of what godly contentment is not? Godly contentment is not complacency. It's not denying feelings or wants or desires of what we can or cannot have on our timetable, but it's a freedom and peace in knowing that these things do not control us and that God works things all out for the good of those who love him and that he wants to provide good gifts for his children. Contentment is not bondage to the whims of desires or emotions that come and go. Contentment is not begrudgingly going with the flow, tolerating circumstances, or pretending that things are all right when they're not. It is that steadfast peace that above all things, our eyes are focused on an unwavering God who never changes yesterday, today, or forevermore, and wants to give us the best. Now, again, it might not be on our timetable, but he does provide, and contentment is knowing that what he provides will meet our needs, not necessarily our wants or anything above what we need, but literally our needs. And again, it can't be engineered on our own. It's a constant recognizing, acknowledging, surrendering at the cross, and the desire for this trait, which can only come from one source. We live such a life of relative luxury in America. What are so many of the things we complain about on a daily basis? The house is too small. The car is old. We have a flip phone instead of the latest phone. The Wi-Fi isn't working. We have 3G instead of 4G. Some really annoying political canvasser with some pro-life agenda knocked on my door. And the neighborhood says no soliciting, but she had the nerve to knock anyway. Let me tell her off. The kids didn't do their homework. They were too busy. They didn't clean their room. The cat threw up on the rug. These are so many of the things we hear about today, and so in some ways we have it all compared to so many other places in the world. Diseases, bombs, dirty water, and it's so easy to take these things for granted. And we just try to squeeze contentment out of more and more and more things on this earth, and the world was simply never meant to produce. Simply cannot produce what it was never intended to give. So is it possible to be content without such things? Paul, an early missionary, wrote to a supporting church in Ephesus that he learned to be content whatever the circumstances. Not that I speak in respect to want, for I have learned in whatsoever state I am to be content. I know both how to be abased and how to abound. Everywhere in all things I am instructed both to be full and to be hungry, both to abound and to suffer need. I can do all things through Messiah who strengthens me. And dare I be bold enough to say that in some cases of envy, we don't even love ourselves and are not grateful for what gifts and talents God has used. We're so busy complaining about what more we could have when that time could be better used actually using what we have and being better stewards of our time and our gifts. And at the end, this will be something we're accountable for. Yeshua made it clear in his parable about the workers in the vineyard that comparison is envy, and it never results in gratification or happiness. Only endless self-torment, resentment, and we all know how that ended in the case of Cain and Abel. It was not the happiest result, and same with the prodigal brother in Luke 15. And furthermore, Paul told Timothy, "For godliness with contentment is of great gain, for we bring nothing into this world, and it is certain we bring nothing out. Having food and clothing, let us be content with that." So at the end of our lives, what is it that we take with us? Our shiny sports car? The clothes on our back? Our retirement account? Or is it our reputation, for better or for worse? Our legacy, for better or for worse? And our souls either for enmity or for God or an enmity toward God, and the souls of all those we have touched along the way, for better or for worse. So what is the solution to all of this envy and greed and discontentment when we all seemingly want the matching silverware, the coordinated color schemes, and more than the basic necessities of life? It's about not looking at the Joneses or your friends or even the rabbi, or in this case, the fake rabbi. It's about looking up, and as within any sin, God has promised to forgive. And this is on such an individual level, can't be in comparison to one another, but how you stand in relation to God. And then when our eyes are focused where they should be and not eclipsed by all this other stuff, it is just so much easier to remember what is truly important in this world. And then just another piece of the contentment puzzle is forgiveness. It's hard to be content when you're harboring bitterness, because usually the person you end up hurting the most is yourself. So it's not about forgiving and forgetting, but a similar process as before, recognizing and articulating it, taking it to the cross, surrendering it, and leaving the results with God to fulfill on His timetable. And at the end of the day, true contentment is enduring, deep down, soul-satisfying, not about external circumstances or what he, she, or the Joneses did. And it only has one source. So while trinkets and toys do not necessarily win contentment in the game of life, this isn't to say that all material things or all intangible blessings are bad. It's just about remembering whose loving hand it comes from. Doesn't mean we can't strive for a better tomorrow for ourselves or our children through hard work, sacrifice, and savings. It doesn't mean we can't strive for a bigger, better house or want to put our children or grandchildren in a better school. If you're single, there's nothing wrong with wanting a godly mate. If you're unhappy in your job, it doesn't mean you can't go back to school to train for something else or look for other employment. The question is it in submission to God? Is it His will for our lives? Is it on our timetable? Is it surrender to His love and His timing and not our own whims or our desires for self-sufficiency? And at the end of the day, contentment above all is just peace that we're not alive for consuming the things of this world, but rather that we're consumed for it, that our time, our money, our talents, and any other blessings entrusted to us are ultimately about expanding His kingdom and not just hoarded for ourselves and more and more and more. And are we being good stewards of such, or are we spending extravagantly and wastefully and selfishly? And it might not be that your neighbor even needs food or shelter. Maybe it's just the simple message of the gospel. So where your treasure is, your heart will be also. So where is your heart? Is it seeking first the kingdom of God? Or is it trusting your own sufficiency, your own merits during times of abundance, neglecting to give Him the true glory? Are we taking credit for ourselves rather than giving Him the credit? Are we only praying during times of need? Or are we giving Him thanks during the times of peace, the healings, and for the blessings that come our way? Are we blaming Him for the bad things that happen to us? Are our prayers selfish prayers for the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow? Is it really what we need? What about our ratio of prayers for ourselves versus for others? Are there any specific occurrences of discontentment that come to your mind, even as simple as someone cutting you off in line or on the interstate? Someone getting off topic for the 5th time at Bible study this week? Anything else that comes to mind? I invite you to pray for forgiveness as a first step toward victory in the future? Have you been caught up in the American dream, the rat race, keeping up with the Joneses? I invite you to confess and surrender any of those occurrences to the Lord in seeking forgiveness. Have your gods been idols of money or materialism or excess or anything other than the one true God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob? I invite you to surrender those occurrences to the Lord in prayer. And has your witness to others been impacted by any of the above, the false gods? Has your discontentment with X, Y, and Z spread to your children, your coworkers, your sphere of influence? I invite you to surrender those occurrences in prayer. One writer once said, "It is hardly possible for men to offer a greater insult to God than to despise and reject the instrumentalities which he has used to appoint them. All experiences and circumstances are God's workmen by which good is brought unto us. So whether it be pain or pleasure, sickness or health, the selfishness of others or the love of others, our own shortcomings or our God-given talents, starless nights or sunny days, loneliness or togetherness, poverty or prosperity. God, where are you in this? I know it all somehow leads me back to you. And therein lies peace, more beautiful than that, perfect peace, in his holy name. Thank you.